One.
Hello and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. I will be your host, Allison, and with me today is Brian, and we are going to be doing Is There a Hero's Journey for Women? That is the title of the show that we will be doing. Maintaining frame number 113. Before we get into it, I just want to remind everyone we are doing our monthly fundraiser at feedthebadger.com/support. Please do help us out if you want to continue to see this edifying content come to your computers. So once again, that's feedthebadger.com/support. We have about 680 left for the month. Although if we do get that, I probably will figure out how we can do the posters. I'm still working on that, guys. I'm still working on the posters. We had a bit of a snafu with the exposure. Some of the details were lost, so we're redoing it again. It's an involved process. Art tends to be pretty involved. So I'll get on that, and I'll get an announcement when all of that is available. But if you do want to help, and you just want to give maybe $5, $10, that's not really that relevant. So please go to feedthebadger.com/support and put in those shekels for us. And if you want to send us a message at any time throughout the show, please go to feedthebadger.com/justthetip and send us a message and whatever tip you want to send. You get the benefit of say, and we get the full benefit of whatever funds you send. So it's a win-win for both of us. Feedthebadger.com/justthetip. And apologies for the late start. I have been dealing with the website. A few of you have mentioned the fact that the website isn't working. Apparently it might have gotten infected with malware, and I had some back and forth with the support people, and I had to restore a previous backup, and it was very confusing about the time, and because apparently the malware may have been on the site since June, but I only got a July backup that I could restore, but that fixed it, so it should be good. Who knows? It's sort of like Schrodinger's malware, so good. It should be good. They assure me it's fine now, so there we go. That's fixed, and then I had an issue with my setup, which I have been changing so I don't jiggle the camera as much, because there was lots of complaints about that. And there's always the complaints about the sound. So if I'm too loud or Brian's too loud or the video's too loud, just tell us and we'll try to fix that on the go. All right. All of the mission critical systems seem to be optimal. So let's get started. Do you want to start, Brian, or did you have
Yeah.
anything you wanted to add to this?
No, the only thing I wanted to say is so the way that my macro works for the camera switching, if it picks up any sound on your end, it's gonna switch to you, even if I'm playing a
Okay.
video. So
So I gotta be really
what we'll
quiet.
do is either that or just mute when you're not talking and then unmute when you're ready to talk.
Okay.
Um
So I need
so
to not stop the rollerblading and the slurping and the demolition
Yeah, it was just
projects from
whatever
Brian.
it is because it is it's a sensitive setup that works well when
Mm,
all of the pieces are working, individually. So I
gotcha.
just want to prevent a situation where, like say I start playing the video and the audio of the video is playing, and then while it's
Mm-hmm.
playing you make a sound. It switches to you, but it won't switch back because the way that it works is it will switch to the scene if there is a pause of 1 second. So like if I pause the video and like everybody stops for a second, then it'll switch. So otherwise I'll just have to do it manually, which I'm fine with. So
Do it
anyway,
live.
yeah, I mean I've been doing it manually for a while anyway. So but the automated
Clip
system
that
is
out. Take it out
super
of context.
helpful. Yeah. um so anyway, we have talked about the female hero's journey before, and
Mm-hmm.
what that might be. And I remember talking to icon carver Jonathan Peugeot about it on the show, and it's an interesting subject because I do think that it's one of the reasons why we are having so many problems with men and women is because women's journey is not it's like the narrative of womanhood is not defined. And I think that there's a
Mm.
number of consequences of that, but I can get into it when we watch the video. So first, I have this video, it's a feminist video, and
Mm.
a channel called The Writer's Mindset is doing an interview with a writer named Gail Carriger, and it's called "What Is the Heroine's Journey." So this is from the feminist perspective. Take that as however you will, and we'll listen to her bit. It's short. It's like 4 minutes. So yeah, let's go ahead and listen to it.
But for anyone who hasn't heard of the heroine's journey,
Okay,
can you
actually, before we get into it,
Yeah, should probably
sorry,
do
I
the
realized I was
things.
mute.
No.
Go back to the very beginning, the first still. I know I did it with Byrony yesterday. Same expression.
Mm-hmm.
And also, how can you have a journey if you're maintaining the idea that women are morally better by virtue of being women?
Yeah.
Where do you journey to? Because a lot about the hero's journey is about taking responsibility for an external set of principles or a group of people that needs your help. Where is the journey for women if they already start with, I guess, moral perfection or relative moral perfection? No, anyway, I just noticed the expression is so similar to Byrony, who we covered yesterday.
Maybe she's mewing.
It's that same kind of smirking, contemptuous, duplicitous, like doper's delight expression. They all start. I mean, like when I start my videos, usually I start on some weird neutral expression, like resting bitch face, you know?
Yeah.
And I try not to because that just looks a little weird, but I'm like, you know, it's just a I'm thinking about how to get the camera working, how to get the sound working. I'm thinking about all of this stuff. What are they thinking about before they roll the camera? Are they thinking about how much they're bamboozling someone? Because that's the expression I get.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out why is your camera frozen on my OBS.
Oh,
yeah,
is it? Okay, maybe I need to reduce.
I think you need to do because your internet is like, I don't know, man. It's super slow.
Yeah, because I'm not really doing anything but this. And for some reason, Elgato just does not want to register this. So maybe that's the problem.
Yeah, it doesn't like this camera feed. I don't know if it's the camera you have or what, but
well, it was working yesterday.
it was choppy yesterday too, though. I don't know if it's just this camera.
Is it completely frozen or
like,
what's going on?
In Video Ninja, it's fine, but the browser source in OBS is very like it's basically like a still frame, and that's what it was doing yesterday too.
Oh, so it's going fine into Video Ninja. So on my side, it should be fine. And it's just on your side, it's just not picking it up.
Yeah, and I just did a speed test, and it's not my internet. But I am getting the red. I'm getting red bars on your end. It says video packet loss indicator of video preview. Yeah, I don't know what I can do.
Because if it isn't in Video Ninja, if it's fine, if you're seeing it in Video Ninja and it's fine, then it's not actually on my end. It's something about OBS is incompatible with whatever I'm sending, which is
that
weird.
Is weird.
Because isn't it just like basically a screen capture?
It's basically a browser source. So what it's doing is,
okay.
So let me see if I can change this in some way to make it.
Yeah, sorry about this, guys.
I mean,
it's sort of difficult to.
Yeah.
Well, technical difficulties with the Badgers. I guess that's
video settings. I'm just trying to see. Maybe I can like, make it like lower the frame rate or something. I don't know, so that it's like smoother. I have no idea.
Well, I mean, I could change.
Are you on Direbox iPhone? Is that your camera?
Yes. Use that. That's my camera. It's because I got like this thing that comes across and it's more impervious to me moving around.
So you're using an iPhone to do this camera work.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. I didn't know you'd know that.
Yeah,
but yes,
I am. The thing. Try losing the moving background. What are you talking about? There's no. No, that's not the problem.
I don't have a moving.
You want me to turn it off? I can turn it off. I don't think that's gonna change anything though. Here, boom, no background. And it doesn't.
And
still, it is what it is. Yeah.
Okay. Well. But it does register that I'm sending it. Just doesn't like the iPhone.
Yeah, for some reason it doesn't like the iPhone.
Well, I can do a lookup on OBS and see if there's anything.
I can change your
Oops.
camera on my end. Let me see what happens if I do that.
So I can't believe that that's an issue.
Yeah.
Like, because it's going through Video Ninja, right? So wouldn't it? Okay, so it here is something. Maybe you need to have a plugin in OBS or something.
No,
Huh?
I don't think
Very
so.
strange.
I don't know. It's just like this. Only this camera seems to be an issue.
Well, because you can use iPhone in OBS, so it's still just stuck.
Yeah. Now you're gone,
Yeah, I turned it off for briefly.
and you're back.
Uh,
I mean, if you want to look
That's
at it yourself, just go to the stream and look at it.
Well, I'm using the desktop camera
Oh,
now.
okay. Yeah, it's still giving me. Well, I
See if
don't
I
have
can
red
move some.
bars, but let's refresh the cache on this thing. Well, I could just do it right here. So, just give me a second.
I don't know why that would change anything.
Oh yeah, now there you are.
I don't know why that would
No.
change anything though.
Yeah, but now it's working.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't get it, but it is.
All right then. I guess we'll use this then. Let me just fix this a bit. Get the cords out of the way. Make it you can actually see me. There we go.
Yeah. Now it's working. Don't
Okay.
yeah, I guess it didn't like that camera. I don't know.
All right. All right.
Okay, well, yeah, we're good. So sorry about that. Let's get into the video. Now that, we'll have like an Allison that moves and not like a talking painting.
We got to
So-
figure that out though, because that camera is less of an annoyance to me.
Oh, okay. All right. Well,
But for anyone who hasn't heard of the heroine's journey, can you just explain how it differs from the hero's journey, and also what words? And also,
Okay, actually, wait a second. Are we? Is this going out? Because it hasn't been. It didn't go to the. It hasn't been announced. Like the only streams that have been announced in the Discord are yesterday's streams.
what?
Yeah, is this actually live?
Yeah, I'm live. There's people watching.
Okay.
Yeah, we got
What the heck is
Gin
YouTube doing
Model,
then?
Art Fours. It's live. It's not. It's public. Yeah, we're live. Well, actually, the vertical is not. Let me make that one.
Sorry.
The vertical one is unlisted, but I'll just make it public.
Yeah, make that listed.
But-
Probably should start listed.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no, it's live, and it's live on Rumble.
Then why is
um,
it not going out to the Discord?
Well, then the announcements didn't go through. That's whatever the bot is that sends out announcements. For whatever reason, that didn't go out. But I put like an event, and it's showing up. So I don't know. It didn't go out on the Discord though, I guess. Let me see here. Show announcements. Yeah, it's weird. I didn't do that, but there it is. Anyway,
Okay,
not
well,
my,
I guess.
not my fault. I don't deal with the bots on Discord.
Well, YouTube's up to something then. I guess we're no longer announced again.
All right.
All right. Let's get
All right,
let's
let's
get this
continue.
done.
Most people are familiar with the hero's journey because of not taught to us. At least eventually you kind of pick it up or encounter it. Just if you're a sci-fi writer, talk about the hero's journey first, because most of the time it's the one people have access to and the language to talk about. Essentially, it's basically this idea that a hero has a quest, has these sort of patterns of withdrawal and return where he goes into a liminal space. And I'm using pronouns casually, so I'll get to that in a second. But so he crosses a threshold, he retrieves a boon, he takes it back, he's presented with an award, et cetera, et cetera. You can just Google and take a look at any image of the hero's journey out there, and it'll give you the sort of circular layout of this journey. You'll be very familiar with the hero's journey because you will have encountered it in like most sort of in a way, the hero's journey, the hero always ends up kind of going at it alone. It's usually him against the universe. He has to prove himself, either to himself or to others, et cetera, et cetera. So it has all of these also sort of messages and narrative.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
I'm feeling the hero's journey towards the point. Good.
She's explaining what it is. It's a short video, but well, we'll get into it. I think there is something interesting here, but obviously we have to get the. So this is the feminist perspective on it. So she's gonna get a little intersectional on us here in a second.
With it. And then there's the heroine's journey. So the first and most important thing to know is that these narratives are referred to using gendered language, but they aren't gendered. So a female or non-binary person can be a hero. And the example that I often use is the recent.
Did you see the Wonder Woman movie?
Which one?
Well, she must be talking about the Gal Gadot one from like when did that come out? Like 2000, I don't know, 13 or something. Like
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
the one that takes place during World War One.
Mm-hmm.
What,
Yeah,
what
I've
were you
seen
gonna
that.
say?
I've seen it.
Yeah,
It's a good. I thought it was a good movie.
I liked it. I thought it
I
was.
mean, it's
Yeah,
not-
it wasn't. I didn't think. I mean, I didn't like the ending, but I liked it.
Where she fights. What was it? Zeus or something?
Ares.
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 Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, like everything up to that point was good, and especially the pilot. He was like, you know, the most likable, and he does the biggest sacrifice. Which, you know, kind of I'm not saying he's the hero, but you know, usually the person who has the most to lose and risks it is like worthy of recognition. But what I mean when I say I didn't like the ending is not the reveal that Ares was like this. I think he was like a some British prime minister or politician or something that was disguised as Ares, and he was like fomenting war. You know, World War One. He was like behind it. I didn't mind any of that. I thought that was really cleverly done. What I don't like is that the ending just turned into a big CGI fight that wasn't very like nice to look at. And I thought they could have done better than just have a big CGI fight at the end. So but I enjoyed it regardless. I there were two Wonder Woman movies, but I'm not talking about the second one. She's referring to the first one. I don't know. I mean, I guess in a way it does reflect the hero's journey, I suppose. Like she's, you know, an Amazon, and she like learns about the world of men and stuff like that. And like all of her sisters are like, don't go there, men are terrible. And she like, you know, falls in love with one. And but I don't know. Is that unique in this regard? What she's saying? Is she right about that? That's why I'm asking if you saw the movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if it's a classical hero's journey, well, I want to note something. We are how much into the video? About half, and we still haven't gotten to the heroine's journey. We're still just
she's
talking
about well,
pronouns.
she said she's talking about pronouns and non-binary people, but
Yeah,
but
and the hero's journey. She's also talking about the hero's journey. She's basically saying Wonder Woman's journey was the hero's journey, which, you know, fair enough, but they still haven't talked about the heroine's journey. I'm just pointing this out. I don't think they really have much
yeah,
to say.
I think what they're suggesting is that the hero's journey can be the heroine's journey if you just change the gender. So it's like a simple
guess.
like that's what I think she's saying. But let's listen to some more.
Similarly, heroines can be male identified or not. That kind of clear. It's just that the language we have to refer to these two narratives was kind of the 60s and 70s, and so that's just how it's fallen out at this juncture. opposite. But what the heroine wants and the goals that she sets for herself are just completely different from the hero. And there's no like a priori value as to one journey being better or worse than the other one. It's just, as readers and as writers, we often gravitate to one instead of the other, especially in the Western world. So a heroine's journey is, generally speaking, she has something that is taken from her, and it's usually a family network or emotional tie or bond of some kind. So the example that I use often is Persephone being taken from Demeter. So then Demeter is started on a heroine's journey because she is questing for her daughter. And that's kind of what the heroine is usually doing. The heroine is usually questing for some kind of reunion or unity or cohesion of some kind. She's looking to put something back together again that was broken, or that she's looking to find something that was taken. And her.
Okay, that doesn't. What about all of the men who are like? Oh, so I guess John Wick is a heroine's journey because he gets his dog taken. Like what? Or taken away. Was his dog killed, or was there the opportunity to save his dog?
No, his dog was killed. Is that what you're asking?
Well, but you know, he loses his dog. I guess the revenge aspect means it's a so any the Big Lebowski is a heroine's journey because he loses his rug.
Yes.
Yeah? And he has to
Yes.
get it back. Like, what the hell is she talking about? This is not okay. So we can't have. So it's specifically a female journey is losing something and getting it back. I don't think so. I don't think so.
I don't think so either. I think
I'm
that's a
not
little
buying
bit.
this.
Well, what about what I think are probably some of the best examples of a classic story that involve a female protagonist: The Wizard of Oz and Alice in Wonderland. So what have they lost in those?
Well, I guess they lost
mean,
their
Dorothy, she's trying to find a way back home. Alice doesn't. I don't think that she's initially trying to get back. I think that she's just dropped into this world. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that she's just trying to. It's like she originally believes in nonsense, and then she goes to Wonderland and realizes it's all nonsense, and she rationalizes everything, or tries to, and that's what put her at odds with like the Queen of Hearts. Is that wrong? I haven't read that in a while, but I don't think it's about finding something that was lost.
Yeah, and also, I don't. I mean, the Snow Queen is another female heroic, and it's basic. Well, I mean, I guess you could say that her friend was taken from her, so she's finding what's lost. But then, what about all your princesses in another castle kind of stuff?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that doesn't seem to be the defining factor. It seems to be arbitrary what she's saying.
Yeah, I know. I do. I think that what she's trying to do is universalize the hero's journey and say this can apply to women. But wait till she talks about. There's another thing that comes up that's pretty interesting too. So I'm gonna play more of the video now. Here we go.
Is similar in that she has a descent, she crosses a threshold, she disguises herself usually, and then she has all of these patterns, much like the hero does. But her goal and strength is almost always in accessing information and communicating with people. So a heroine on her journey is always seeking to talk to people, to get in contact with people, to put a group together, to put a group quest together. I like to say that heroines make very good generals. They're usually really good at identifying the strengths and weaknesses in others and activating them. Heroines are very good at asking.
Okay, all right. So what are the other things? So a heroine loses something and goes on a quest to get it. A heroine goes on a quest to put a group together. Is this another thing that she's saying that is part of the heroine's journey? You mean all of the assembling the crew for a heist? That's the heroine's journey.
Oh, well, I don't know if she would say this, but I would say
all of the bioepics on Napoleon. Heroine's journey, because he's assembling an army and people who can enact his will.
It is a bit cringe to say that they're heroines are good generals. I think that's a bit.
This is a very interesting interpretation, because I never realized that the war part of War and Peace was the heroine's journey, as opposed to the part that involved the domesticity and everything that was going on there. No, actually, it was Napoleon gathering his troops and then the Tsar gathering his troops. That was their respective heroines' journey. Oh, good Lord.
I will say though that again, going back to the Wizard of Oz, one of the things that Dorothy did well was that she brought out the best characteristics in the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Cowardly Lion. So she brought out the best in them, and that was what you could say she was their leader. But it's almost like she was their mother. It was like a very motherly thing that she was doing. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's what she would say as an example, but that's what I was thinking about. Anyway, let's play the rest of this.
Quality where they're really good at knowing what's needed to accomplish things together. And the end of the heroine's journey is almost always a compromise of some kind that is for the good, for the greater good, for the good of mankind. In the case of like the ancient Greek myths, Demeter's compromise results in the seasons, which allow for the harvest, etc. And so that's kind of sort of the core of these two narratives.
So it's for the greater good.
Okay. So this is pretty thin, but let me see if I
Yeah.
got everything that she actually said. She said that heroine's journey, I'm just gonna open up a little text document. Heroine's journey involves losing something and getting it back, gathering the troops, so which is recognizing other people's unique skills, asking others, and finally it ends with a compromise. Did I got that right?
Yeah, and it's for the greater good.
For the greater compromise, for the greater good. I haven't seen that for a while. I mean, how are women compromising for the greater good now? You see. Oh, look. My camera's jiggly. It was jiggling while I was writing. There you go. That's what I was trying to stop.
Well,
But
we
I
could
guess we
hear
gotta figure it out.
hear the typing too. It was very aggressive.
Yeah, I do have aggressive typing.
Yeah. Well, okay. So this definition of the hero's journey for women, the heroine's journey, is, I believe, less than satisfactory, unsatisfactory definition in my
Final
opinion.
conclusion. This is a D grade definition. D? Would you give it a D?
I would give it a D. I'm not saying I know the answer, but I don't think that's it. I think that there is something about we should be looking at the old stories to see what is in them, right? What is in them that is I don't know, something that women can take inspiration from. Now, I also have another person who spoke to this, and I also think they're wrong, and I'll tell you why when we get to it. But this is Mary Harrington, and she was talking to Jordan Peterson. And I didn't watch the whole interview, but I did see this clip, and I kind of thought it was interesting, where they are Peterson is talking about the hero's journey because it's something that he talks about a lot, and he was trying to figure out what is the female version of this. And one of the things that he sort of proposed was that the image, like the biblical image of the hero's journey, is the Christ, and the biblical image of the female journey is actually not Mary, but Mary with child, right? And so it's an image of motherhood, right? So it's Christ in both images, but one is being carried by Mary and the other one is on its own. And Mary Harrington is trying to give her version of things. And so we're going to listen to this, and I'll tell you why I think that Mary Harrington is also wrong, although she brings up something kind of interesting.
secondly, on the question of heroes' journeys for women, I actually wrote, not in the book, but elsewhere, I wrote a short essay about this a couple of years ago, because in my observation, there is a hero's journey for women. It just doesn't follow the same track as the male one. And in fact, it has 3 parts which correspond to a very ancient archetype for what a woman, for a very ancient female archetype, which is the maiden, the mother, and the matriarch, the triple goddess, who's a figure out of some pagan traditions. So, in which these are the 3 faces of the same goddess, as it were, but they take on different aspects at different parts of a woman's life.
All right, so she's talking about the 3 faces: the maiden, the mother, I think, and the matriarch. Okay, or there's another way they put it is like the young girl, like the before when she's single, when she's got children, and when she's old, like the crone, as it were. And this is not untrue. This is we all go through it, but I think there's something really interesting here. We'll listen to more of this, and then I'll give you my thoughts.
And anecdotally, to me, it stacks pretty closely with what actually a majority of normal women's lives look like. As the maiden, you're free. You have a sort of warrior aspect. And perhaps that's the point where you're pursuing ambitious professional projects. The mother is more oriented towards home and the domestic sphere, and probably just doesn't care about work as much. I mean, I know a great many very high-powered maidens who reached motherhood perhaps in their early 30s, and then just found they just didn't care about the deadlines and the spreadsheets anymore. Couldn't give a stuff. I mean, this anecdote, I'm sure, anecdotally, that's pretty common. And then, but then later on, and this was something that I found very interesting when I did a psychotherapy training in the late aughts and early tens, was just how many of the trainees on that course were women in their 50s and 60s. So these were women who, for the most part, already had young adult children. Their kids had gone off to university or were soon to leave for university. So they'd pretty much done the motherhood arc. They'd done the mother part of that, and they were moving into a new phase of life. They were moving into what I think of as the matriarch space. I mean, I think the classic 3-part goddess term for this is crone. But I mean, they were some way from cronehood. These were lively, vital, energetic, public-spirited women who had some life experience. They had a lot of connections. They had a rich social life. They'd met lots of people, and they were ready to give something back.
Okay. Is that really a journey or just life stages? Like, I mean, do we have the same for men? Like the male hero's journey is, you start out as a young bachelor sowing your wild oats, and then you become a settled man, and you have a midlife crisis, and you buy an expensive car, and then you retire, and like that's just life stages. It's not really a story about a journey. Because first of all, it doesn't have an element of a story goal, right? It's just personal interest. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, that's the issue, right? Like when she originally proposed it, I was talking to Lindsay about it, and we were like, oh, that's interesting, but I've heard it before. Like the 3, I think they call them the Fates in Greek mythology, and it's like a young girl, middle-aged woman, and an old woman. But the problem with that is, it's just like you said, it's just what everyone goes through in life, including men. So the hero's journey is actually a part of the first, like if we were to break the life cycle of a man into the same 3 parts, where you have the young man, the father, and then like the elder, for example. Well, then the hero's journey happens to the young man. In most cases, it sort of fits into that, because the father is it's like a different life. It's like the father is, raising a young hero of his own, or maybe several. And then the elder is the guy who shows up in the life of the hero, like, he's like the Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's the one who comes into the guy's life later and sort of introduces him on the path. So you can't say that the 3 life cycles of a woman are equal to one small section of one part of the male life cycle, which is the hero's journey within the first, you know, the first section, I guess, the first third of the
Mm-hmm.
male life cycle. The riddle of the Sphinx. Do you know it? It's like
Mm-hmm.
what walks on four legs in the morning, two legs in the middle day, and three legs at night.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically that is the cycle of men, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think that it's incomplete, and also there's another thing about this that's interesting too, is that one of the things I think we're running into with young women today, especially these modern women, these manifestel types, is that they have not gotten out of their maiden phase. They're just going to be maidens until they're in their 30s or 40s, and they may miss out on the other things that come later. So I wonder if because there isn't a story for women, that's why they're sort of stuck there. It's like, being a spoiled girly is essentially failure to launch for women, but we don't want to look at it that way because we know how shameful it is, I guess. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but
No, you're making sense. Just so what she's presenting as life stages for women, you think is corresponding to the first part of the hero's journey for men, or
no. I mean, like the hero's journey for men is only taking up, like, it can fit into the life cycle for men as well. So you
Mhm.
see, like, because there's no hero's journey where at the end of the day he's like an old man. Normally he is a man. It is a coming of age thing. So he leaves a boy, starts the journey as a boy, returns as a man. He is transformed. But that only brings him from the first stage where he's a young man, a warrior, to maybe the second stage is like where it ends, where he becomes a father. Hence the man bringing home the princess and like marrying her, and they have a big family. So it's like once you become a father, that is like after the end of your hero's journey, if we're looking at it symbolically. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah. So I think Mary Harrington is missing the point, because the hero's journey for men and why they're drawn to it, it's important because it challenges them and it changes them. Like, it puts them on a path of hardship. If you look like, and there isn't something like that, or at least we haven't really explored it honestly for women.
Yeah, I mean, where's the hardship? Where's the service to others yet in what she's saying? I
Where's
mean,
the
I guess you could,
sacrifice?
yeah, the
Right.
sacrifice. Okay, let's finish this one off, eh?
All right. Yep.
And it's in my observation there are a huge number of women who reach the end of the mother arc, the mother part of that hero's journey, and then embrace perhaps and will then retrain. So they'll have three careers. They might have so they'll be very professional in their 20s. They'll be a bit more, somewhat more part-time, maybe 30 to 50, and then they'll retrain and they'll do something like psychotherapy, or they'll do ministry, or they'll do spiritual counseling, or they'll do some or in some other way become involved in the community, and they'll want to do something public spirited and give back. And those women are a hugely rich force for deepening reflection in the culture, for public service, for all manner of incredibly positive, usually quite self-effacing, but incredibly positive, constructive, and life-giving
Self-effacing, huh?
contribution.
Yeah.
Really? Okay, well, how many of these women are willing to acknowledge that men have a validity and a valid point of view, not that women don't necessarily have?
Well,
Like,
it does
that's
assume
true
that
self-effacement. That's
yeah.
true willingness to admit that women are not the alpha and omega. So
Yeah.
anyway, let's do you want to finish it off, or did you have something to say?
No, I don't know that there's a lot left, but we will. I think I got like the main thing I was curious, like, to wanted to talk about, which is her framing of this is incomplete, and that it doesn't actually answer the question, like, what. Okay, so let's put it this way: what would be like the male version of the maiden? Would we say the warrior? Can we say that? Or the
The
adventurer or
orphan.
whatever? The orphan? Okay.
Yeah, actually, I would say that the maiden probably, yeah, the orphan.
Okay, so
So,
the first stage is the maiden. We have the maiden, the mother, and the matriarch, or the maiden, the mother, and the crone. Um, and they all have their place. I think that we don't honor like our elders like we used to, and I think that a lot of that has to do with the fact that we're sort of separated. A lot of people are separated from their family, from their ancestry, so they don't have the same reverence. They don't have the same filial
mm,
familial piety towards it. But let's just say that this is how it has been in the past. So the first phase is the maiden, the second phase is the mother, and the third phase is the crone. For men, we'll just say the first phase is the orphan.
orphan.
When the hero's journey begins, the orphan hears the call to adventure, and when
Yep.
he completes the journey, he comes back as someone who was ready for the next phase, which is the father. So this is what I mean. Like it is through the journey that he is ready for the next step, which is to be the
Yeah, I see.
father.
I get what you.
Okay?
Yes.
Yeah. And there
And
is nothing like that for women, which is why women are girl bossing all the way into their 30s, because there's no
50s, 60s.
call, or 50s and 60s, yeah, because there's something missing there. Does
Mm,
that make sense?
yes.
Um,
Yeah, and
okay.
no, I get what you're saying now. So the hero's journey is the transition between these life stages, or that you are that the individual or the character is made ready for the next stage. And she's saying that the heroine's journey is the life stages, which is actually
Yes.
very feminine if you think about it. The hero's journey is something that a man goes out and he achieves the skills necessary to enter his next phase of life. And she believes that the heroine's journey is simply going through
Time
changes,
happens
that
to her.
time happens. Time happens.
Yeah.
And
That's the
that's it.
yeah, that's the challenge. And Mary Harrington is not, she's not dumb, but I don't think this has been thought through, because it's like, wait a minute, you know, men also experience the three phases. And it'd probably be good if there was some kind of story or narrative for each one. And I think there is. Like, there are stories about fatherhood that are meant to inspire men to become wise, like, and become like the elder, which is sort of the male version, the wise man, because he has this lived experience of both being a young warrior, orphan, and also being a father, and that's what they carry into their old age. And I think if you skip a step, it is a bit of a hindrance. Um, but
Well, most of the hero's journey really seems to be about the journey from an orphan to a warrior, which gets the male character ready for the next stage. I mean, if we go to the prototypical version of this, which is Star Wars, like the original Star Wars,
mhm.
Luke very much starts out as a orphan, right? That's almost
Well,
his
he's got
definition.
his
Defining.
aunt and uncle.
Yeah, he's got his aunt and uncle, but he loses his aunt and uncle, which is the start of his journey. He becomes
Hmm.
the orphan, and then he goes through the process of learning with Obi-Wan and becomes a warrior. But then, excuse me, sorry about that. And then he becomes a warrior, but then he takes it a step further and he starts to question his own desire for revenge in the process of developing himself, or developing his wisdom, which will take him more to the point of being, I guess, the king. So it's orphan, warrior, king, and sage, essentially,
Mm.
are the
Mm.
three life phases. But for the most part, people focus on the journey for young men between orphan and warrior,
Yeah.
and not so much the journey from warrior to king, because that requires understanding, I guess, more of a like social impact or social the effects, or the effects of not just obtaining power, of exercising it in a way that helps bring about legacy, right? And then of course the sage is the point where the male character takes on the role of cultivating or I'll use the nurturing other characters, the strengths of other people. So I mean, so what she hasn't really identified a journey. She's just identified the stages. And so women have
Right.
their own stages like that. I don't know if there's a warrior stage. They seem to go from maiden to matriarch and then to crone. Maybe the problem is that there's no step between maiden and matriarch like there seems to be with the male version, which is orphan to warrior, then to king.
Mm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean that's something to think about.
That is something to
But
think about. I was
let's
well, I got some Super Chows, and this video there's nothing left really. But I did
Oh
get some
really?
Super
Okay,
Chows.
that's it?
Yeah, I mean, I just
I thought maybe she in the last like
well,
2
I could
minutes
play
she
the
might
the
actually,
rest of it, but I don't think she says much
Sure.
else. But let's do these Super Chows
maybe
really
she's
quick.
surprised. I mean, I don't think she's going to surprise you because you watched it, but maybe
I did, but I don't remember if anything stood out for me after this. But
the hero's journey requires a journey, not just stages.
yeah, right. I do think I guess I do think that fatherhood is part of the stages because men's like actual hormones change when they have kids, and I think that it's like preparing them for another stage in life. And it's different. I don't know how to explain it, but it is different. But anyway, so Super Chows. Richard Bier gave us $5 and says, "Okay, I recall a fairy tale story about a daughter of a king who sent her to live with a family of commoners who had some beautiful daughters. The princess had an upturned nose, a downturned mouth, and no sparkle in her eyes. She also had a really bad attitude, and over the course of living with this family, she had finally overcome her attitude by willingly performing various domestic tasks instead of demanding to be waited upon. As she performed each task successfully, a bell would be heard ringing, and a bird would sing, and one of the undesirable characteristics would be corrected. I don't recall the title, but perhaps someone in the audience will." I don't know. That sounds like it's like learning to humble yourself.
Yep.
That's a good thing for people in general. So I don't want to. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it is particularly feminine. Like it's something because it like the opposite is sort of not as discouraged. Let's say. But I don't know if you guys know what fairy tale he's referring to. Let us know in the comments, in the chat. Richard Bier then gives us $5 and says, "So one day this princess was feeling nostalgic / wistful about having some muffins, and because the mother and her daughters weren't home, she tried to make a batch herself, and having watched the family making them, she tried to do what she had observed, and even though they didn't turn out perfectly, she was praised for at least taking on the effort of doing so, even without perfect results." And then I got one more Super Chow. Asthrun gave us $5 and says, "The hero's journey is like a rite of passage for men. The man has to conquer the challenges so he can get the woman, by showing he has values and principles. I don't see the equivalent for women, unless getting a period and people viewing you differently, but that just happens. She doesn't have to complete a quest. She gets the reward and value automatically." Well, that's why we're talking about it, though.
Yeah, that's why we're talking about it. But I think what we have to look at is what women need to do in order for society to function properly. That would probably entail building. I mean, we could probably reverse engineer a heroine's journey from that. And and it might be as multifaceted as the hero's journey, but I think that's where we start. What are the things that women need to accomplish for society to continue to exist, essentially? And I think that would probably be a start to understanding specifically heroine's journey, right? Not just spitballing about, oh, maybe heroine's journey is assembling the troops like a heist movie. Like the montage of a heist movie. Or maybe a heroine's journey is trying to get something back, like the Big Lebowski getting his carpet back. Or maybe a heroine's journey is, is compromise for the greater good, like that one. You remember that video, that one, the guy who did the zombies?
Oh,
God.
are you talking about the director of Shaun of the Dead, Edgar
Shaun
Wright?
of the Dead, yes.
And you're talking
How the
about
hell
the
did you figure
movie.
that out?
Yeah, you're talking about the movie where
Yeah.
everybody was saying for the greater good.
For the greater
That was
good, yeah.
Hot
Like that's the
Fuzz.
heroine's
Was
journey.
Hot Fuzz?
All of those
Yeah,
people on the council who were like, you got to die for the greater good, dude. That the
yeah.
greater good.
Well, okay. I got a I'm sorry, a Rumble rant. I want to read it really quick, and then I'll mention something about what you said. NovaFan21 gives us $1 and says the idea of a female general being acutely aware of the strengths of others sounds like a Mary Sue trait stolen from men's hard work. It could be. Maybe what I think. Maybe we look at what the strengths of women are. What are women's potential strengths? I think that even though it doesn't seem apparent today, I think that
Well, before we get
maybe.
into that, why don't we
Okay, okay.
finish? Let her
All right, all right,
finish.
all right.
Like before we get into what we might think the heroine's journey, let's let the people that we're discussing have complete their say. I'm just saying, I'd like to do that. I'm completionist, I guess.
All right, all right, all right. Let's do it. Let's watch the rest of this. It's okay.
to the social fabric, and they're incredibly marginalized. They're almost completely invisible in terms of the liberal feminist narrative, which really centers the maiden. And it wants to foreground the maiden and to tell women that the hero's journey means essentially being the maiden for their entire life. And everything else is just, the mother is pretty much, at best, if the mother is noticed, it's as a problem to be solved. And the matriarch doesn't really get a look in at all. And if she does, it's only so that she can be denounced for being a TERF, or in some other way, spat on for being a dinosaur or obsolete, or old fashioned, or out of touch, or in some other way irrelevant.
This went downhill.
It did?
Yeah, well, it just became about personal pet peeves.
Yeah, I think that just think about this for a second.
Or ideological incompatibilities, or it's like, no,
I think that feminism does prioritize the maiden, and also wants women to live as maidens their whole life. And why that is bad for the crone is it essentially makes the crone non-existent. I mean, yes, women do grow old, but if there is no mothers, then there are no elders, there are no matriarchs. So this is, and yes, it will be seen as something old-fashioned. Well, but here's the thing too. Once you're a crone, you're basically just another man. So welcome to being a man, I guess,
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, she's making it kind of petty though.
Yeah, I'm sorry, like the whole TERF, it's immediate pettiness. It's like, oh, they don't appreciate my particular insight as an older woman. I'm just a problem. Well, TERFies are pretty misandrous, so you are a bit of a problem. But regardless, let's. So, is there anything further? Like maybe? Oh, there's a few. Yeah.
I'll finish it.
Like,
there's like another minute left. All right, here we go. Hold on a second.
Or ridiculous. And in fact, these women are the backbone of the social fabric. I mean, those are the women who are making weak cups of tea for slightly traumatized new mothers like I was in small town England, and telling me I'm doing fine. And really, that mattered a lot at the time. Those are the women who are running brownies groups for no money at every Wednesday because they can and because they want to give back. Those are the women who are retraining as counsellors and helping traumatized people for free. Those are the women who keep things going. and yet somehow the liberal feminist version of the hero's journey just doesn't see them at all. And I think so I've been very keen to make a case for a richer, if you like, a three-part to opening a space for thinking about women's heroes' journeys in a more spacious way, which actually just observes what life looks like for mothers and for
okay. What we don't observe what life looks like from others? Like this is something we don't do already?
Let's play the rest of it.
Yeah. In the arc of what the average woman's life looks like when she does have when she does become a mother.
All right, so we're done with that. Okay.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, let me do my little typing thing. Sorry for the aggressive
All right.
typing. The heroine's journey is also the 3 stages of life. 3 life stages, which apparently does not involve any kind of achievement. It's just time. Time happens. Does not involve achievement. Involve acquiring achievement or acquiring skills or living up to standards or a journey. All it is time passes. Time happened. Okay. All right. Let's look at. Okay, you had something you wanted to say, so go ahead.
Well,
Brian.
I think Mary Harrington at the end, she does sort of confess that she's opening up the conversation around it, and I do appreciate that she said that I mean, she calls it liberal feminism. I don't know what that means, but feminists they want women to be maidens their whole life. And I think the reason for this might be, just thinking about it, at what stage does a woman have the most power? Is it when she is a maiden, when she's a mother, or when she is a crone? I think that feminists will argue that it's when she is a maiden, when she is young and fertile and, attractive, she has the most power. Women have a lot of social power, especially if they're young. And feminists believe in framing everything in terms of power dynamics. So they want to give women every advantage. So they ask them to be girl bosses and remain maidens, which they see as a warrior type attitude for their whole life. And the problem with that is that it's ultimately that power is self-serving only. And that's how you get, by the way, the situation we're in now, where single women, which is the maidens we're talking about, are a voting bloc. And they are a demographic voting bloc now. And they're using their power, which they have as single women, as maidens, to essentially just get what they want. So where there is a missing story there for something for women to aspire to, it is right in there. So like, I wouldn't say that motherhood is the answer. There needs to be something before that, because if women don't want to be mothers, then that step won't happen. So there is something that women need earlier during that earlier period, that is a narrative, a greater societal narrative around women that inspires them to want to do like good selflessly and humbly for their society. That's a big ask. I'm not gonna lie, that's a big ask. But I think that's where, like, I don't think Mary Harrington would disagree, because she admits that, this this forever maiden thing is kind of like the root of the problem. So it's like, okay, how do you shake out of it? And I think that you need a heroic tale. And so for women, though, that tells them, I could just try to get what I want out of this, but I should be thinking about the world I leave
the
behind.
Greater good.
Yeah, the greater good. Could say it.
The compromise, which doesn't seem to happen. Well, I was thinking,
and how do you do
like,
that if we're like constantly protecting women from the consequences of their actions?
Yeah, and we're constantly just prioritizing sort of endless, not committing to anything. I was just, when you were saying that, I was thinking, well, what is the power of the maiden? And honestly, if you really bring it down to brass tacks, it's just being selected by a good man. That's it. Now, what feminism does is it uses that power of desirability and politicizes it for its own benefit, right? So instead of using that power to start building a life, women submit it to feminism so that, I guess, feminist women with NGOs get really stinking rich.
Yeah,
I don't
buddy.
like. So I think that's what's sort of happening. So they want to keep the maiden in that state because the more women are at the precipice of choosing, the more they can use that influence in a political sense in society. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because they're saying, well, I advocate for all of these women and what all of these women want. And if they're kept in a state of maidenhood, then that body of women that you advocate for, the women who are not picked, I guess that's why the greatest insult is that you're a pick me. It's because you're no longer part of that great political body of women that and gives the sisterhood its clout, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've decided to transition into building a life with someone, you know. But that all of that, I advocate for all of these single women, right? That creates a great power, but it has nothing to do with benefiting the individual woman. So the sisterhood gains all of that clout by all of those women picking, not being picked. So and again, that maybe that's why the greatest insult is that you have been picked. You're reducing the overall power of the sisterhood. And you want to shame that because you don't want to do that. You don't want to reduce the clout. The perception that feminism advocates for all of these desirable single women or women, period. And okay, so I mean that could be part of it. Well, I was thinking if we want to move away from like criticism of what's actually happening to the question of what is a hero's journey. And it was interesting that the timing of all of this too, because you sent that video today, and yesterday myself and the patrons and people who were involved in like the writers retreat in our patron Discord, which if you're interested to see at least the preliminary stuff, you can go to badgernation.online. And we were discussing what is a heroine's journey, like what is unique, what is the journey that's unique to women in terms of a heroic narrative. And there was a book that we had been reading because they're in conjunction with all the criticism of writing and looking at storytelling and all of that. We also read books called Butterfly and Hellflower. And there was one person who was participating who said that she thought that Butterfly and Hellflower represented a heroine's journey, like a butterfly is like a long haul space trucker. So it's sort of a masculine sort of role that she's sort of like Ripley, except no xenomorphs, right?
You're right. Okay.
Ripley before her whole life was turned upside down. And she ends up getting involved with this kid who is a super soldier, but he's really young and he has no clue about the streets and how to exist outside of the way he's been raised and being part of that system. And he is royalty of some kind because he's, I don't know, it's like some kind of space Klingons, whatever. And he's being targeted. And she has to help keep him alive, and also nurture him into somebody who can manage the situation that he's in. So grow him into someone who has the strength of understanding the streets as well as this physical strength. He constantly gets into fights he shouldn't get into, all kinds of stuff like
Right.
that. So it's like
Sarah Connor.
yeah,
It's Sarah Connor from Terminator 2. Yeah.
Yeah, she's put into a nurturing role. So she's nurturing this other character who needs to develop his strengths in order to manage a situation. And the reason why they were thinking, or we had this discussion, we came to this conclusion, the reason why it was considered a heroine's journey is because of that. It's not just about her own strength. It's about the fact that she is nurturing and protecting someone else's strength who she eventually has to let go of. And it wasn't just this kid. It was also there was an AI involved that she was actually protecting. And she had to basically get both of them into a state where they could stand on their own 2 feet and be able to manage the situations that they were in, but ultimately leave her, right? The kid returned to his father, and the AI ended up leaving her ship. So that was and the idea is that a heroine, at least this aspect of the heroine's journey, is that it's not focused on developing her own strength, but it's focused on developing the strength of others who then she has to let go. So it's like a motherly role,
Yeah.
right? You have to give them the skills that they need to navigate the world. But it's also a paternal role as well. But that seems to come in more with the when you become a king or a sage. But you mentioned Sarah Connor. Sarah Connor probably would also be entering that role too, because through the process of Terminator 1, she becomes pregnant and she's going to have a child she needs to teach to become the savior of the human race.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's almost even like, if you think about it, it's got a touch of Mother Mary.
Yeah, it does.
Um,
It does.
yeah. And so she's got to nurture the savior. And that is it's a very feminine hero's journey. So she needs to learn the skills
Well, and
necessary to
that's just
nurture
it. In
somebody
the
else.
original, it's a really good point. In the original Terminator, Sarah Connor was a single girl, had a roommate. She liked to party. She was like liking cute guys. Like she was living the maiden life. And then Kyle Reese, like the Terminator shows up trying to kill her. Suddenly she realizes something is wrong. Kyle Reese tells her what's going on, right? And while trying to help her survive, Kyle Reese and Sarah Connor, they bump uglies and they have a baby, and then she realizes she's pregnant, and so like it forces her to change. Like by the end of the first movie, she is completely different. Although, and then by the midpoint of the second movie, when they see her again, she's changed even more dramatically because she's like embraced her new this is her fate now. This is what she has to do, right? I can't go to the club anymore. I can't go hanging out with the girls. I gotta focus on, essentially getting back to my son, because that's what the second movie's all about. She's trying to escape so that she can like get back to her son and protect him and prepare him. So yeah, this, and even in Aliens,
Two.
Aliens, that's why I said yeah. So in Aliens, Sigourney Weaver's character finds a girl on the planet where the xenomorphs are, Newt, and she, even though they're not related, she protects her in a motherly way. And of course, she lost her daughter. I think in Aliens.
Well, it was the time she ended
the
up going
time
into
passage, right? She was in cryostasis for like long enough that her daughter died of old age, or something. So yeah, but like she's relearning that same thing, and I think that's why honestly that's why those movies work, because I think it does need the touch of a maternal instinct in there, but it can be used in a way that essentially is women's way to bring out, the best in people. So
Well, the other thing is that if you look at those two movies, I'm going to ignore Aliens 3 because it's not that great. And it undoes everything that's done.
Aliens 3 kind of does, because she gets pregnant by a queen and like kills herself. I mean, it's not a bad movie, but it kind of misses the point.
Yeah, a little. But and I'm not even going to reference like the
no.
Terminator
Let's just
movies
say the
beyond
first
that.
two, and that's it. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
just the first two. But it's interesting how you have Connor, Sarah Connor. She starts as very much like you were saying. She's the maiden, but she has to go through this process of toughening and gaining strength and courage as well.
She's really
as,
emotional. She's fragile. She's always crying and screaming and hysterical. And Kyle Reese like shakes the reality into her.
But she learns to become tougher, and that's part of it's necessary for her to gain the strength to become a mother, right?
Yeah. And in that way, Kyle changes Sarah Connor too. So he changes her, and then she in turn changes her son.
Yeah, and he changes her. He also gives her a purpose as well. Is he, and I think that's a part maybe of the journey from a maiden to having the strength. It may not end with them becoming a mother, because with Ripley's character, she was already a mother apparently when the first film started. So
I think so. She was a
yeah, no,
space
it's just,
trucker. There was a cat in the first Alien movie.
yeah, it was the cat. So she protected the
Yeah.
cat, but she had a kid who was back on Earth. And essentially what happened is she was in cryo. Oh wait, no, no, she was in cryo after the end of Aliens 1,
One.
and she ended up aging like 60 years, and her daughter was dead by the time she got back to Earth. So that's how she lost her daughter. And so she was already a mother, but through the process of confronting the alien queen, she developed a courage and
Mm-hmm.
self-reliance, which then was necessary for protecting Newt in the second movie.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like there is that element of, yeah, maybe the maiden has a warrior arc, but ultimately what they're doing is developing the self-reliance and the skills necessary to nurture another character through to strength, right? Like with Sarah Connor. It's more explicit with
Yeah.
Sarah Connor, I think, than the Aliens franchise. It's interesting we're talking about science fiction though.
No, I think
But
those
maybe
are
that's
really great examples because, like, back then it was sort of, they were just working within. James Cameron gave us Terminator and Terminator 2 and Aliens, so you could see parallels in both of those. And I think that, I mean, like, there was another thing I was going to mention is that Kyle Reese sacrifices his life to save Sarah. So there's a sacrifice, and that is probably like the ultimate motivation for her to survive,
mm-hmm.
and has also survived with the child.
Mm-hmm.
I got a super
Yeah, like
chow.
he
Super
gives
chat.
her purpose. And
Yeah.
that's before we get into the Super Child, that's one of the aspects I think of the going from maiden to being prepared for being a mother, is to gain this desire or this willingness to use your sexuality, which is what this is more for Sarah Connor than
Yeah.
Ripley, but to use your sexuality and the aspect of your reproduction, so the process of having children, raising them, in the service of a higher cause than yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Right, that makes sense. So you are having children. I'm going to use sort of a controversial. You're having children for Allah. You're having children for the Jewish community. You're having children and you're raising them as Americans, proud Americans. You're having children and you're raising them in your religious group or your cultural group or your ethnic group or your national group. And there's a sense that you are part of that destiny, the overall destiny of that group. And the way that you serve that group is by having a child and raising it with those values. And if we go back to the in order to defeat sin in the human race, right? It's this higher purpose, and you're putting your sexuality, those aspects of your sexuality and reproduction, to the service of a higher purpose. And so I think that's an element of it too, is to develop that sense of sacrifice for a higher purpose. And yeah. Okay, well, go ahead.
All right.
Read the.
So I got a super chat from Jay Stewart, and he says, "Writing archetypal character arcs by K.M. Wayland. It gives gendered cycles of growth and lists examples of positive and negative arcs for $5. Thank you. That's a book. I'm gonna check it out. Writing archetypal character arcs by K.M. Wayland.
Yeah, I'm going to check that out too.
Yeah,
other
I'm just curious about it.
To get out of science fiction, another work that I've been looking at recently, War and Peace. I told you about that a while back. I might have talked about it yesterday too. We've been looking at all of the variations on War and Peace that have been filmed. So the 1956, I believe, one with Audrey Hepburn, the 1960s one from the Soviet Union. I will not be able to say the names of any of the actors. And the 1972 one from the BBC. There was a 2007 one also, which was like an Italian, French, and German interpretation. And then there was a 2016 one. And so having gone through all of those versions, first of all, the 2007 one is appalling. Don't watch it. The others all have their own pluses and minuses.
Yeah.
but just 2007 is just gross. They just essentially, they turned it into a soap opera. They turned it into a vehicle of wish fulfillment for women and flattery, and it's just really appalling. It loses all of what makes War and Peace worth it as a story. And it also has really, really ridiculous battle scenes. It's just the worst. Anyway,
Yeah.
but the reason why I bring it up is because the character of Natasha, I think, represents a female heroine's journey. And there's a big part of War and Peace that revolves around her being engaged to a man named Andre, and ending up being seduced during that engagement by another man named Anatoly. And what happens is Andre wants to marry Natasha, and they're very much in love. But Andre's father says he wants him to wait a year and get his health in order because Andre is older, he's a soldier, he's injured. He does have poor health. And he also wants to make sure that this very young girl, because I think Natasha was like 18 and Andre is like 31, which, was okay in the time. His father's concerned about him marrying a very young girl and that she will retain her interest in him. So he wants them to wait before he gives their blessing. And during the year, Natasha's doing her very best to wait and be patient. And, she tries. And, but then she has this disastrous meeting with his father. His father is really kook. Like, he's a crazy sort of eccentric, and things happen, misunderstandings happen. She thinks his father hates her. She thinks the sister hates her, which she's not wrong. In the book, the guy, Andre's sister, actually isn't really fond of her. But, and all this happens, and then she goes to the opera. Her family's trying to cheer her up, brings her to the opera, and she meets this guy called Anatole. And Anatole just loves bombs her.
Yeah.
So she's going from this situation where she can't be with her beloved Andre. He's sort of a stoic guy. He's a little cynical, not very effusive, to the situation where she's with this guy who's like, I love you. I've loved you since the moment I saw you. He just loves bombs the crap out of her.
Yeah.
And she starts to develop this thing in her head. And it's very clear when you read it. Not so clear. It's much more difficult to describe in a visual medium than it is with written, because you're watching her internal narrative. And I'll get into why it's more difficult to describe what's happening with Natasha in the visual medium. But she's going through this process where she's inventing this reality within herself, right? She's inventing this idea that she has already betrayed Andre because she has sexual feelings for the Anatoly. So she's already convinced herself that the relationship must be over just because she's got the hots for another guy. It's just a matter of she doesn't know herself, right?
Right.
And she doesn't know when things are just fleeting, and when there's something there that you can build on, and when something is just a fleeting emotion. And she's constructing this whole reality in her head. She's already betrayed Andre just because she's had sexual feelings for another guy. She's convinced herself that this is a fait accompli, and she even sort of hates herself for it. But then she's like, okay, I guess I have to go with this other guy now. And I know it sounds really crazy, but it's a pitfall that women have, where they get into this state, this self-referential state, where they stop recognizing external factors and just start building something based on what they feel. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
They build a reality based on what they feel. And Natasha builds this reality based on what she feels. It's only really understandable when you're looking at interior monologue. And honestly, I'm amazed at how accurately Tolstoy can depict this. Like, he really understood women. He really understood the pitfalls of being a woman, because there is that you're having an emotion, you're going to construct reality based on an emotion with okay, what is actual reality? What's happening externally? And this is really hard to depict because visual medium really needs the external to explain what's going on, right? What's external to the characters. You see something out there and you react to it. That's how visual mediums work.
Right.
The characters in a visual medium have to react to something external. We have to watch them react to it. And what's happening here is an entirely internal process where Natasha is building a completely fictional reality based on what she feels, an emotion that's fleeting. And the other thing is that she gets very protective of this reality. So when her cousin Sonia confronts her about this and says, okay, this Anatoly is not above board. Why is he trying to spirit you away in the night? If he was a man of integrity, he would be asking your father for your hand in marriage. He wouldn't be just dragging you in the way in the middle of the night. And Natasha gets absolutely irate over Sonia pointing out the obvious. Like, that's an external thing. Her constructed reality based on an emotion becomes something that she becomes so defensive about if someone introduces any external factors, any external facts. She rejects them and hates them for it, right? And then she goes into this incredibly negative spiral of all of this. What ends up happening is her family finds out. They kick Anatoly out, and her friend, or the friend of the family, Pierre, who's the actual protagonist of the book and these shows, he tells her that Anatoly is already married. He was going to practice bigamy with this, and the character arc that Natasha has to go through is that she has to recognize this about herself, and she has to realize what is a good man to choose. And you cannot base it purely on emotional factors, on who gives you the tingles, who's love bombing you currently. Andre may not be as effusive, may not be as capable of saying romantic stuff, but he was a really solid guy and respectable and upstanding. She loses that relationship, by the way. Andre's like, yeah, no, I'm done, gone. And Natasha actually deeply, bitterly regrets it, and regrets what she did, and regrets the nonsense she got into. And what ends up happening is Andre goes to war because, of course, Napoleon is invading Russia. That's the backdrop of the whole story. He gets mortally wounded, and the way that it's presented is it's almost like he gets himself killed, right? There's a bomb that comes down like a cannonball, and it's the fuse is lit. It hasn't exploded, and he's just looking at it until it explodes, basically. So he gets mortally wounded. He actually ends up in the same medical tent as Anatoly, the rival. But at that point, he doesn't give a crap because he's mortally wounded. Anatoly is also, he ends up getting his leg amputated in the cot next to him.
Yeah.
So he's watching this guy just screaming. And of course, Anatoly ends up dying anyway, probably from an infection or gangrene. But at the time, like, Andre has this, he's so close to death that he no longer even cares about his resentment towards Anatoly. So he actually holds the guy's hand as he's getting his leg amputated. It's a pretty intense scene. And then he goes back, and Natasha eventually finds out that he's dying, and she goes to him, and she wants to get his forgiveness, and but he gives it to her. He doesn't give it to her, he just gives it to her because he's dying. He doesn't care anymore. And he actually even says, I was stupid to hold you to that standard. But what was interesting, and this is the 2016 version of the movie, how they approached this confrontation or this reconciliation. They had Natasha say, "Don't treat me like a child. I was responsible for my actions, and that doesn't change. I appreciate your forgiveness, but you can't say that it wasn't my fault, because it was." So she takes full responsibility for what she did, and for the nonsense she got up to, and for that thing that women do where they turn their emotions into reality, and then they absolutely attack anyone who says yes, but this isn't reality. You're missing a whole bunch of facts. Anatoly is married to someone else. He can't marry you, you know?
Yeah.
And so she takes full responsibility for it. He eventually, so she regrets it. And she takes responsibility for it. They reconcile. He dies, and she's nursing him at the end. So all they have left of their relationship is the days before he dies, and he takes care of her. She changes his wounds, feeds him, makes sure he's clean, all of that. So she basically becomes 100% of service to another human being, even though he's going to have to let him go. And she knows it. She knows he's going to die. I mean, at one point, there's this hope, but then it's dashed and it's obvious he's going to die. And she continues to tend to him.
Mm-hmm.
And so she has this reconciliation with him. And she grows through the process of being of service with no benefit to herself. Like, the guy is not going to survive and become her husband. She's doing this solely because she regrets how she behaved, and she wants to make sure his final moments are as comfortable as possible. That's it. So that is her hero's journey. And then at the end, finally, she does end up getting married. She marries Pierre, who watched this whole process. And honestly, I think that she deserved it because she took full responsibility, and she learned the lesson of selfless service to someone else, and learned the lesson of not getting seduced by your own headcanon.
Yeah.
And then the final scene in the 2016 version is her saying, the best part of love is, when it's not falling in love. It's being in love. And at that point in time, she's a wife and a mother. She has multiple kids. And she's saying, this is the best time this is the best kind of love. So she had that arc, is going from a maiden who almost chooses very badly. In fact, she would have chosen if her whole family hadn't pulled her back from the brink and said, absolutely not. You are not touching that bigamous, rat bastard.
Mm-hmm.
And then realizing what she did, or almost did if her family hadn't interceded, regretting it, going through an act of complete selfless service with someone who she's not going to be able to keep. Like, he's going to die. He's going to be gone. And then gaining the right to have another partner and become that maternal character. She learned those skills, and then she became a mother. But it wasn't just because time happened.
Yeah.
See what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Okay. All right. So that's what I have to say.
All right.
I know that was quite long.
No, it's all right. Somebody does ask, which version do you think is the best of the story? Uh-oh. Allison, I don't hear you. Allison, your volume, your mic is muted or something.
I'm muted. I'm muted. I'm
okay,
sorry.
all
Okay.
right.
Which version of the story? I was in my own headcanon. Sorry, guys. I was unmuted in my headcanon. I don't know. Everything was wrong. I don't know what the hell you guys are saying. The best version? Okay. Well, each one has its own strengths. I think the BBC's let's start with the Soviet version. Well, okay. The Audrey Hepburn version is fun. It's sort of an inspired by version. I wouldn't say that it's a real accurate adaptation. I wouldn't even call it an adaptation. It sort of gets you into the whole thing. Let's not talk about the Audrey Hepburn. I think one of the problems is that Audrey Hepburn is Audrey Hepburn, and she was Audrey Hepburn in this epic, and I'm not quite sure if she embodied Natasha. The next one is the Soviet version. The Soviet version is very avant-garde in what it's trying to do. Like, instead of presenting a narrative, it sort of tries to give you the feelings that the characters have. So, for example, in the intro, where Pierre and Andre are at this party and they're feeling very alienated because they don't quite fit in with Russian high society. The Soviet version turns the gossip of Russia, like the gossip of the character that in the book was sort of introducing the whole story, um, turns their gossip into the sounds from like Charlie, Charlie Brown. So
Yeah.
it's like that these two guys in this kind of montage of confusion with almost going in the background to create this sense of ennui and disconnect. And I mean that's interesting, but it's also sort of alienating. However, the battle scenes in the Russian version are the best, I would say. Like I think they had the highest budget. Maybe the 2016 is comparable in some ways, but maybe not. I'd have to look at them much more closely and time closer together. But yeah, so the Soviet version is one if you want to look at avant-garde cinema and trying to generate a sense of emotion rather than actually focusing on the story and character interactions. That's interesting. And the battle scenes are the best. The BBC one is probably the most comprehensive and accurate to the plot. I think that one of the best parts of the BBC one is the interaction between Sonia, Natasha, and Natasha's mother, Natalia. That they really tried to make their interaction very, very. I'm gonna get stakes and tension and conflict. So they tried to make it so that the domestic aspects of the story could stand with the more strategic and military aspects.
Yeah.
And I think it worked because you can make things that are more. You know what it is? Why didn't I do this? Is this not that my Shure microphone isn't it? This is just what the heck is going on here? Just a sec.
Okay. Well, while you're figuring that out, I got a super chat from Albert Nader Retro.
Sure, I'll finish
He
the
gave
answer to
us,
this.
that's cool. He gave us $2 Canadian and said, Xena had a great hero's journey of redemption. I didn't watch the show, but I'll go along with it. My mom watched it, but I didn't watch it really. So I understand it wasn't bad TV though. Okay. Now, what?
Did you finish what you wanted to say?
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay, for some reason. Okay, here.
Oh, I can't hear you now, Allison. Oh.
Is that better?
Yeah, that sounds a lot better.
Okay. Is it better than what it was before?
I mean, it was audible before. We just did a whole show. But
oh, okay.
This
I'm
sounds
sorry,
like
guys.
crisper, so
That's good. That's good. I can't use the earphone, so that was what was going on. God, I'm stupid. All right, so to finish my impressions of War and Peace, the BBC version was also really good for sort of explaining the context of the war, and I think it had the most sympathetic look at Napoleon and the Russian general whose name I will probably butcher, but I will attempt. Kurtuzov. Yeah, like Kurtuzov is absolutely one of the best characters in this entire story, by the way. I judge the adaptations by how well they honor the memory of Kurtuzov. But anyway, the 2007 adaptation is just awful. It's appallingly bad. The battle scenes are Hollywood-esque and like the worst kind of B movie sort of kind of Hollywood. And the setups of the characters, this is what they did. They turned all of the female characters into martyrs, and all of the setup of the redemption arcs for the male characters, where often these weren't even redemption arcs in the original. They were just, conflicts between characters. So for example, Andre never really needed a redemption. He was just who he was. They made it so that Andre was more of a bastard. They made it his father was a rat bastard, And then what they did is they had these male characters just be awful. And then at the end, like at last minute, they would redeem themselves by telling the nearest woman how right she'd already always been. Like, I'm like, that's terrible. This doesn't capture what Tolstoy was trying to say at all. So
Mhm.
just avoid the 2007 version. I know there's some people on like Reddit who think it's tolerable, but I think it's because it tickles their ovaries. It's basically flattery for women and soap operas. The 2016 one is the one that I found the most emotionally impactful. That doesn't mean it's the best one. I just found it to be the best storytelling. Now, you have to realize that what the creator did is he focused on those scenes and dialogues and characters that built up the theme that he wanted to explore, because War and Peace is like 500,000 words. You have to winnow it down unless you want to do what the BBC did, which was huge. Like I think it was 18 hours. So he did reduce it, and he reduced it to those things that explored the theme of graciousness, forgiveness, and reconciliation. So if you're prepared to see that focus, then I think you don't expect to have a one-to-one adaptation of War and Peace for the 2016, but it's a good one. I think that that's a way to go, is to focus on one of the aspects of a multifaceted work. In terms of that's actually what one of the individuals who watched this with me suggested, is that that's a very good way to approach an adaptation, is to
Yeah.
just take one of the themes and focus everything around it. And so I think it was a very good one. And I think if I were to rate them in terms of the character arcs of Natasha, that one's number one. Number two would be the BBC. Number three would be the Soviet version. And number four would be Audrey Hepburn's, although Audrey Hepburn just plays Audrey Hepburn. And then I would put, like, there was no character arc in the 2007. Like, they just completely got
Yeah.
rid of the idea that women need to evolve at all. That women aren't perfect as they are, and the only evolution they need is for the rat bastards to admit on their deathbeds that they were right all along.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's my appraisal. There
All
you
right.
go.
Well, I guess that's it. I mean, I got nothing else, so.
Yeah, no, we're good.
Yeah.
We do have some thank yous, or at least
Oh,
one.
great. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to thank Meredith G for putting $100 to the fundraiser.
Thank you,
So thank you,
Meredith.
Meredith G. That is let's see, that puts us $580 away from the goal. So we're doing pretty well. I mean, we got 2 days left, so hopefully we make it. If you do want to help out, it's at feedthebadger.com/support. If you want to wait for the conclusion of whatever I'm doing with the posters, it should be a few days, and I'll just do a continuance. But anyway, if you want to just support, it's feedthebadger.com/support. And if you want to send a message about anything that we said, you want to suggest another show topic, you want to make a comment on what I have described here, you want to talk about War and Peace, you want to send so you can legitimately send us War and Peace this time. You want to send us your thoughts on War and Peace, or on Heroine's Journey, or anything else, you can do so at feedthebadger.com/justthetip, and we shall endeavor to respond to it at the next reasonably on-topic show. So I guess that's it. Feedthebadger.com/support to support the show. Make sure we can continue to keep talking about these things in the way that we do. Feedthebadger.com/justthetip to send us a message about anything we've talked about in this show, or just a message. All right, back to you, Brian.
Okay, well, if you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, leave us a comment, let us know what you guys think about what we discussed on the show today. You'll find links to the original videos in the description, and please, please, please share this video, because sharing is caring. Thank you so much for coming on today's episode of Maintaining Frame, and we will talk to you all in the next video.
Are machines, dude. Okay, they are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.